Okay, everybody, I want to introduce you to Robert Scheinfeld. Robert Scheinfeld is a new teacher of mine, and I've spent, a few $100,000 the past 4 years on different like teachers and retreats and modalities and all these things, and I've really had a Robert's had a really transformative impact on me. He's a best-selling New York Times best-selling author and so much more. So, Robert, I just want to thank you for your time for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So this will most likely be for people who have already seen the Ultimate Freedom Experience, an online program that I purchased from you. And you know, I feel like it'll make a lot more sense to them after they go through the Ultimate Freedom Experience. But we'll jump right into it. And I'm just going to share my story, and then Robert's going to give me a little feedback and thoughts on things related to my story that just to kind of like help narrate what he feels is going on. So that way I could understand the ultimate freedom experience in my life even deeper. And then I could go kind of share it with people around the world. Um, so I'm going to refer to myself as the Sean character and picture it as like the Sean movie. My life is a movie, and you're going to see these waves going on. And so I'll refer to it in the third person. So the Sean character was born in Northern Illinois, and my Sean character's dad had a really rough childhood, really abusive father, all the things. But he was doing the best he could. And Sean character's mom got pregnant at 16 years old, had five kids by the time she was 23. She had like a 10x traumatic childhood with like all kinds, the worst things that could possibly happen to a little girl happened to her. Dad never paid her any attention or love to be seen or not heard. And then the dad died when she was 10. So then my Sean character's mom gets into drugs, alcohol, and then all of a sudden 16, she's pregnant. 23, five kids. And so she's doing the best she can. Sweet lady, but all humans are kind of broken in their own way. Never looked at all that trauma to this day. So Sean character is born into this family. The the first real big memory is when he was 6 years old. He's looking out his front window of his bedroom window, and he's waiting for his dad to come home because that was the only like happiness he felt at the time. And so Sean character realized, oh my gosh, my dad's never coming home again. Like it just like clicked. And then he felt like this feeling that people would label depression it was the first time he felt it like this dark. And so what had happened was just a really nasty divorce. And then basically there was a lot of like bankruptcies and like poverty type of stuff because that love caused a lot of pain, that caused a lot of money problems. So then Sean character's dad's a traveling man and he's got to go, all over. Plus he's got to find his new girlfriend and Sean character didn't get to see him very much. And then Sean character's mom was like, I'm gonna go find a boyfriend. I'm gonna go be a single mom and try to work jobs and just go, go, go. So Sean character's mom's gone. The siblings decided to gang up on Sean and beat him and torture him and things like that. For whatever reason, Sean was like the obnoxious one, almost instigating, bringing on that abuse and things like that. So there's lots of little traumatic stories there that Sean character remembers. So then there was a deep, deep feeling of Sean character, you are not loved by anyone. And so it was a lie, it was a story, right? But that's what I felt. And so then there was just a lot of women at 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, like shaming Sean, like you are stupid, you are just a lot of shame, guilt. You are not enough. And so looking back, it was just like a lot of you are stupid, you're not enough. There was some, you know, getting beaten by random adults, like punched, knocked down to the ground. You are a dumb motherfucker. So this is like 0 to 10, a lot of programming. So then Sean goes into like 12, 13 years old and felt like he found evidence that he wasn't accepted everywhere he went. There was just, if you're looking for evidence, you could usually find it. So, not accepted by his peers. Obviously, he had to move schools. The new school, he wasn't accepted, all these things. So, 12, 13 years old, finds drugs and alcohol. And that got Sean a little acceptance because he would bring the drugs and alcohol to the place. And then people would be like, oh, Sean's here. But they wanted the drugs and alcohol, not Sean. But still, it was like a feeling of acceptance. So then from 12 to 24 was like kind of a cloud where he's having a lot of fun, dating girls, partying, all kinds of crazy things, like almost died many times. And, you know, there's just hours of content there, but you kind of get the point where he was escaping because he didn't want to feel the pain that he felt. And then all of a sudden, and I just want to pause to see if is there anything there that you feel called to say, or should I just keep going?
Well, there are things that I could say, but it would probably take a little bit, and then you're kind of on a roll that might get interrupted. So, do you want me to add something at this point, or do you feel like you want to continue the story till you feel like it's more complete?
Yeah, okay. I'll just do that. I'll just keep on going into the next phase. And so then all of a sudden at like 24 years old, there was all kinds of illegal activity going on from like 12 to 24. Like, and I don't think my wife would be happy with if I put too much out there of the things that I was up to at that time. But it was to the point where it's like, okay, I I'm gonna go to prison, and I don't think I want to go to prison, and I want to like there was just all these thoughts appearing in inner space inside of Sean, like I need to make a change. And then Sean was very good at running from the police. He was very good at hiding from the police, jumping out of windows, jumping out of cars, running, car chases, things like that. So Sean had a squeaky clean police record. It's just a miracle. It's got to be a God thing that Sean never had like a mark on his record all those years. And I'm like, I always thought it'd be cool to be a police officer. So Sean's up in the Chicago area. And it's like, man, how am I going to stop doing all these illegal activities? Well, if I go down and stay with my friend in Florida for 6 months, get clean, I can't keep doing all these illegal activities in Florida because I don't have the customers, I don't have the network. It's just going to shut down my whole program by going to Florida for 6 months. So Sean goes down to Florida for 6 months, gets clean, quits all the illegal activities, and starts getting in shape because he felt called to become a police officer. Because Sean always had a big heart, always loved people. Even though he was a bad guy, he wasn't a bad guy. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So Sean just always was, he was like a human radar detector in his dad's car when he was little. Like, Dad, you're going 56, the speed limit's 50. And Dad would always get pulled over and get tickets and stuff. And it was funny, but Sean loved running, chasing. He loved adrenaline, so he had a big heart. He knew that he could help people. So it was just like the thought appeared like you should go be a police officer. So after 6 months in Florida, he gets back to Illinois, starts testing for these different police departments. And all of Sean's friends are like laughing at him like you are effing crazy. Like there is no way in the world you be a police officer. So anyway, Sean's like, okay, well, I still feel like this is what I'm gonna do. So anyways, Sean gets hired as a police officer, gets sent to the police academy. It was like a 3 month intense program. And Sean had a program that he was stupid. And it was hard to get through that, but it was like God was with him that whole time, and he was able to like squeak by and push through and pass the police academy, all the requirements. So then he gets on the job to become a police officer. So then he's on the streets now, and it was the first like 13 months he was put through a lot of challenges that he did not sign up for. Like for whatever reason, there was lots and lots of dead people, dead kids, there was like seven fatal car crashes with like really sad situations where Sean's showing up and he's the first one there. And he didn't know how to handle any of these things. There wasn't proper training. And Sean was, I guess you'd call it an empath, is a story where he's like soaking in all the people's pains. Like the parents show up on scene and Sean's going to do the death notification. And he was dating a girl in town and in the district he was working. And he shows up at a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a car crash, a car wrapped around a tree. And so then the girl that Sean's dating is in the car. She's completely dead, but Sean didn't know it because he was like, out of it. Her eyes were open. Sean thought that she was talking to him. And later on, he found out that she was dead like before he even got there, right? Well, then the sergeant shows up on scene to the call, and Sean's like so traumatized. Sergeant's very hardened, like the typical stereotypical cop. He's like, "You go to her house right now and you tell her mom what happened." And Sean was like, should have been like put in an ambulance at this point, right? I mean, so then he goes and does the death notification, all these like traumatic things. Sean remembers like falling on his face, crying, didn't know how to process these things. And so that was like a crash course, like the first 13 months as a police officer. And then as time went on, he just learned how to like bury it and like get this like vest over. It's like almost like a imaginary bulletproof vest where I can't let anything out, but I could take everybody's trauma in. So then we'll fast forward to um, over the years, just lots of traumatic things are happening, but Sean never knew how to handle those things. So he's going through a lot of traumas, but not knowing how to process it or release it. So then we'll
Still
fast
a cop?
what?
Still a cop?
Yes, it was a total of a 15-year career.
Okay.
So then we'll fast forward to he's about 10 years into his police career, and he shows up to a call, and he a fight breaks out. There was fights that would happen all the time, and Sean was a pretty good. He could hold his own when he had to. He wasn't like an aggressive cop, but if he had to hold his own, he could. So he shows up to this cop or this call, and a guy goes to attack his partner. So Sean jumps in between them and gears up, and the guy Sean was very confident, but did not know that this guy was like a cage fighter. So Sean gets completely pummeled, and the side of his head gets bashed in, and he ends up in the emergency room and goes to the neurologist. The neurologist is like, "Hey, you got to get all this help." And so Sean goes back to his police department. The top two bosses sits in the office and they sat down and they said, Sean, don't milk this. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. This neurologist is a joke. You don't need nothing. You know what I mean? And so Sean was very weak in this point because he had a wife and two kids and he wanted to provide for them. He didn't want to lose his job. He was like a rising star in the police department at this time. Like, oh, you're gonna go to the top of this police department. You're gonna get your pension, all the things. So he's like, yes, yes, I'm fine. He tells the bosses I'm fine. And up to this point, it was like God was like putting Sean in like these specific places at the specific times that no other police officers, this stuff would not happen to other guys. For whatever reason, like Sean's on the other side of town, right when the armed robbery takes place, and right as he's coming out of the liquor store and, you know, police chases and catching the armed robbers, things that would never happen in a police officer's career would happen to Sean all the time. So who knows? That's like a side thing, but he was a rising star at this point. Then all of a sudden, he goes back to work after that head injury, and then all of a sudden his career just starts going like this, like a nosedive. And he started having like delayed reaction time, like PTSD, type of things. Like for some reason, it multiplied everything that he had already been through. Depression, anxiety, couldn't sleep. The marriage was in turmoil. Being on midnight shift, two little kids. Wife has her own childhood trauma along with Sean's childhood trauma. It was just a big mess. So the marriage turned into like a business relationship. Okay, we're not going to
Now,
teach.
excuse me, this was all just the craziness of what was happening, or was there
I think it was
brain
that.
trauma or brain damage?
I think it was the head injury, but I don't really know because it's like if I had a broken leg, you would see it, but a broken head, you don't really know. So I still don't know if it was that, but it was really interesting how the timing was like right after the head injury, everything started nosediving. So then Sean basically doesn't know what to do, but just keeps on showing up to work, doing his job. And then eventually the defund the police stuff happened in Illinois where cops were getting um, convicted, fired. Cops were scared to do their job. And if they did pull the trigger and it turns out the guy's holding a cell phone, it wasn't a gun, then the cop goes to prison. So it's just a very crazy time where cops were really scared to do their job. So then Sean, with his delayed reaction time, this is not a good thing, right? So I'll give you an example. So we show up to a call and it's a home invasion. And so we have 9 cops surrounding the house, the home invasion, the guy's inside the house, and I'm Sean's in a neighboring district. So it wasn't his police partners, it was the neighboring district. So he didn't know anybody. And he didn't know that these cops were scared to do their job because their partner had just gotten fired the week before for putting their hands on somebody. So Sean doesn't know it, but he's in a trouble situation right now, but he didn't even know it. So the bad guy gets out on the roof. He jumps off the roof, a one-story roof, and runs off into the darkness. And so Sean runs around the house like, okay, you got to get this guy off the streets. He's a bad guy. And so just runs, chases him. Eventually, 50 yards in the darkness, he catches the guy, tackles him, fight breaks out. At this point, you're supposed to have one cop take this arm, one cop take this arm, put him behind his back. Well, none of those other cops came. They just kind of sat there around the house and twiddled their thumbs. So Sean was alone. So the fight goes on and on and on and on. And then finally somebody comes. By the time this happened, the bad guy had a broken jaw and a mouthful of blood. So then they made Sean the suspect and they made the home invasion guy the victim. Obviously, he's still guilty of the home invasion, but that fight was a separate incident where there's a victim and a suspect. So, Sean couldn't sleep for days. He's being investigated for now harming a poor home invader. But eventually Sean gets cleared, but Sean's like, what am I gonna do? I can't, I'm gonna go to jail or I'm gonna die or something bad's gonna happen. Like, I can't do this anymore. So Sean goes back to those same 2 bosses and he says, hey, I'm having delayed reaction time. I'm feeling depressed, anxious, like might be some PTSD stuff. And they said, Sean, it's been more than 3 years since your head injury. And according to the state of Illinois' laws, we don't have to do nothing for you after 3 years. So then they just kind of looked at Sean as damaged goods on the police department. So it was like, holy cow, like what am I gonna do? So then Sean ends up um, quitting his job in at year 15 of being a cop, packs up his wife and kids, and moves down to Florida to start a new life. No pension, no money, not knowing what he's gonna do with $50,000 because they had to give Sean his money that he put into the pension. They didn't give him a pension, but they had to give him his money, and that was $50,000. So come down to Florida. Okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And he was still really broken at this time. So then he started on the journey of, okay, I'm going to go to Tony Robbins. I'm going to read this, book. I'm going to go to this seminar, this meditation retreat. And so for the past 5 years, because that was 5 years ago, Sean's doing all these different modalities, books, seminars, retreats. And then
Why?
to, it was like to try to overcome the I am not enough. To like the thought was like heal from the PTSD, heal from the head injury, heal from the childhood. Like let's do some deep work. And it's like God put the thought or the feeling to just this is what you're supposed to do, you know?
But
It's
it was to heal and fix stuff. It wasn't to try to answer the question, why did all this crazy stuff happen to me? Or that was part of it too.
No, I think it was the heal and fix at this
Okay.
at this point in the journey. It was like trying to poke holes in the cloud, maybe, but and so that God's sun could kind of shine through, like you say. And I know that you say it a little different, but so then all of a sudden, fast forward to this year, 2025, April. Sean's invited to Turkey to go to these ancient temples with a bunch of friends, and he goes there, and there was like some type of like heart-opening experience. So for the first time, Sean was able to shed a tear. It was probably the first time in like 15 years where Sean was able to shed a tear. And it was like this, he could start to like feel love and give love for the first time ever. It felt like, and so one thing that I skipped was God always provided enough money over these 5 previous years. Sean got into investing in gold and silver and crypto and trading and all these things. And Sean would like make a lot of money, lose a lot of money, make a lot of money, lose a lot of money, but he always had enough to take care of his family throughout this last 5 years, which is a miracle. And so yeah, basically ends up in Turkey, heart-opening experience, and then all of a sudden the work for whatever reason, maybe it was the work from the previous 4 years, or maybe it was God saying, "All right, Sean, you've learned a lot of these hard lessons. I'm gonna help you kind of feel me and feel my love and how to give love." And I don't really know how to put it into words right now, but so then the last 6 months have been really extraordinarily magical and
And how
doesn't
old are you now?
44.
Okay.
And so now all of a sudden, for the first time in 18 years, him and his wife are like taking steps towards each other. Like there's a potential for a future to like create a new relationship, this marriage, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of like attraction of opportunities and people. There's a lot of magnetizing people into my life that are like, hey, Sean, I got this battery technology and I want you to partner with me and we'll go make $100 million. Or, hey, Sean, I got this crypto project and this is going to be like the next Bitcoin and we'll make $100 million. There's things like coming that are like very, so Sean's starting to get over the looping thoughts of you're going to run out of money, you're not going to be able to provide for your family, you're not enough, it's going to be whatever. And he's starting to see a lot of evidence that God's got him and has a plan for him to be abundant and never have to worry about money. So, um, and then there was a experience where he sat with a plant medicine called iboga. And this was like maybe a year ago. And during that plant medicine experience, um, it's like this tree bark from Africa. And you grind up this tree bark and you take a spoon of it, and this guy sits with you and kind of does like psychotherapy throughout the whole 5 days. And in that, it's like Sean's body and mind were like this. And I read David Hawkins' book where it says, "You are not your mind, you have a mind." You're you're not your mind, you have a mind. And I never understood that. Then all of a sudden during Iboga, during the ceremony, it's like there was all of a sudden this space where I was like, "Oh, I'm not that mind. I have a mind." So it's like a light bulb went on of those thoughts are not me. And so then this past year has been a lot of that where it's like a lot of so he's feeling at this moment like a lot of possibility, a lot of happiness, but he's learning like life's still going to go like this, but he's learning to enjoy the movie of Sean, whether it used to be labeled as good or bad. It's not really good or bad. It's just embrace the experiences wherever you're at. Like I get a call from my mom last night and she's like, "Hey, she's suicidal. She does not want to live anymore. Um, her husband just died like 2 weeks ago, and her whole body's in pain. All this horrible stuff. And instead of like contracting and crumbling like Sean used to, Sean's just like, "Okay, mom, well." I'm gonna book a flight. I'm gonna come up there. I'm gonna, try to, show some unconditional love because she's alone in this house up in Chicago. Sean's down in Florida. I'm gonna connect her to some widows groups. I'm gonna like just some thoughts appear from God of things you could do to possibly help her with no attachment of it actually helping. But just, this is what you would call one of these down here. But I'm still okay. Even in low, I'm going to go handle what I can handle, help what I could help with no attachment. And then it'll go like this. So there's so much stuff skipped over there. And I'm open to any questions that might pop in you. But I just wanted to hand it over to you and get any thoughts on
Well, first, I want to hear where ultimate freedom or anything from my sphere of influence contributed to you being in that, being okay with what happens and enjoying the movie stuff. I need that piece before we continue.
yeah, so um I feel like I don't think you explained it in this way, but I feel like one thing I got from Ultimate Freedom is this movie is playing out. It's divinely orchestrated by God. And it's a boring movie if Sean's life is just like, oh, everything's magical. He's got great parents. He's got lots of money. The best at all the sports and blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty boring movie if it's all like this. So, what I got from Ultimate Freedom Experience is that all these things in Sean's life, some people might hear my story and be like, oh, he was a victim. He went through all this hard stuff. But now, after Ultimate Freedom Experience, I could see like this is a divinely orchestrated plan to get me where I'm at today. And it's like the sun's been shining the whole time. Like you teach with the sun, and there's been clouds covering the sun, and now it's like I've been poking holes in the cloud cover, and now the sun's starting to shine through. So I don't know what phase I'm in because you there's the three phases and phase one, phase two, phase three. But I feel like this trust, this acceptance with how life unfolds, and it's not good or bad. And so people try to control their life and fear and control and fear and feel the shame and the guilt and I'm just in this like very matter of factly place of just I'm just enjoying the movie of Sean. Let's see what happens next. And before it was like control, fear, oh my gosh, I'm not enough. It's like, and thanks to the ultimate freedom experience, I'm like, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't have to stress about this anymore. I don't have to stress about money anymore. I'll get the right amount of money, like you said, for what I need for the movie of Sean. It might be a little, it might be a lot, it might be somewhere in the middle, but I'll give you an example. Like I had a belief that I could help a lot of people. I because all my brothers and sisters, they're having their own challenges. My mom's having her challenges. My dad's having his challenges. I could get them to these retreats. I could introduce them to maybe some plant medicine or the right or introduce them to the ultimate freedom experience or whatever. And now there's one doctor I want to take my dad to that would cost like $50,000 right now. And I'm like, but what why didn't this one investment work out? I was gonna send my dad to that doctor with the money. And now I'm just like, oh, well, I guess it's not in God's plan for me to send my dad to that doctor, so he didn't provide that money. So there's like this trust and acceptance from the ultimate freedom experience. So I feel so much less suffering. A lot of the suffering was in the mind, which you refer to as the mind machine. So that doesn't do it justice, but just to give you a little bit of context.
Well, the thing that occurred to me a lot as you were telling the story is, and this is not meant to, minimize or anything, the story that you shared. Everybody's got their stories, human life is crazy. And everybody has their struggles, and some people have easy childhoods, and some people have much easier journeys. But for the most part, most people experience some kind of trauma. The vast majority of people, no disrespect or judgment, I'm just making an observation of what happened to me on my journey. The vast majority of people, they just live that, you know. They struggle with the trauma. Maybe they go get therapy or they do healing or they do other things trying to feel better. A lot of people never do anything. They just struggle with whatever their stuff is their whole life and then they die. Some people, of which I'm one, because I didn't have the same kind of stuff you did, but I had stuff that in the way I was built growing up was traumatic and created wounds and distortions and what I call lies, illusions, and stories about myself and reality. And one day, and then I threw myself into self-help, personal development, spiritual development. I was willing to try anything. You know, I was in so much pain. And all these patterns kept looping you talked about it a little bit, but I had these patterns with relationships always being terrible and difficult and traumatic and very difficult, and then I would end them. And then in business, I kept looping up, 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 crash and burn. I would be doing something and I'd get more successful, more successful, more successful, and I didn't change the way I was doing things. But all of a sudden, crazy stuff would happen out of nowhere, and I would crash and burn and lose everything. And that kept happening, except every time there was a cycle of up, 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 the numbers got bigger. And then it got into the millions. And here, like you said, I had a wife and I had two kids, and I have a very high threshold for pain. But when it looked like I might crash and burn again after this gigantic success, I went outside in my backyard and I looked up as if talking to God. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Um, there's obviously some big truth of life, why this is happening, why it keeps happening, why I can't stop it, why none of these self-help things or personal development or spiritual development help me ease the pain, stop the patterns from repeating. There's got to be some truth out there that I don't know, and a lot of these other teachers out there don't know. And I need you to tell me what it is. I need to really understand what's going on. The deep questions that humans have been asking since there's been humans. You know, who am I really beyond just this physical body? Why am I here having this human experience? What's my purpose? Why do things happen to me the way they do, especially the crazy stuff? I needed answers to that kind of stuff. And I actually said, I need you to either give me answers or I need you to kill me because I can't live this way anymore. And I can't crash and burn and watch my wife and kids suffer. I mean, it was one thing when it was just me, but now they would pay the price for this crazy stuff in my life. So I got to the point where I was desperate for answers. That doesn't happen to everybody. No judgment or disrespect, you know, no compliment to me. That's just some people get to that point. Wait a minute, what's really going on here? And they start looking for answers. They become what's typically called a truth seeker. And that's what happened to me because I couldn't understand why these patterns kept looping. And I couldn't understand why my life was so difficult. And you said there's all these things that happened to Sean as a policeman that didn't happen to any other policeman. You know, I mean, there was stuff like that with me too. Um, I now humorously refer to the what I call the old Robert as the king of weird. Because I can't tell you how many times in my life something has happened and I've gone to somebody, you know, and they've said this has never happened to us before, you know. Um, but I needed answers. I needed to understand what this human experience was really all about and how it works and how does it get determined what's going to happen to me every day and why. And then when I know what the big truth is, how do I change the way I live my life to align with that? Because all these personal and spiritual development things that I had embraced, I ultimately came to the conclusion of they're not true or they're missing something. And so I got to find out what the real big truth is. And then I got to figure out, all right, well, once I know that, then how do I live my life in a very different way to eliminate the struggle, suffering, and pain, stop these patterns from looping, and be able to enjoy my life and my work and, you know, but mostly it was I need to find out what the truth of life is. I call it the big truth of life. Again, who am I really? Why am I here having this human experience? What really creates what happens to me every day and why? And ultimately it was job number one was I got to find a way to eliminate all this struggle, suffering, and pain because I was drowning in it, which I think you can identify with. And I couldn't live that way anymore. And so I basically begged for help or death. This was, geez, maybe 22 years ago or something. I'm 68,
Okay.
so mid 40s. Nothing happened immediately, but 8 months later, something started to move, and I started to get answers. And it took the shape of what I call an inner teacher. It was a voice that I started to hear. And some people go, "Ooh, he was hearing voices," but that's what it was. It was a voice that appeared in inner space, and it was kind of like, I'm here to help you get these answers. And this voice started to teach me. And as things were happening in my life, would start helping me to interpret them. And all this stuff started to happen. These things started to come through me. And I started to get clarity, but still, I didn't have full answers and I wasn't clear, but the process started. And a whole bunch of what I call puzzle pieces, because I compare um, discovering the big truth to putting together a jigsaw puzzle. Imagine that somebody bought a jigsaw puzzle and it had 1,000 pieces, and they didn't show you the box, so you don't know what the picture is, and they just dump all these pieces on the table, but you have no idea what it is. Usually you get a jigsaw puzzle, you've seen the box, oh, this is a picture of a nature scene or whatever, but imagine you just got all these pieces. So you start trying to fit the pieces together, and it doesn't look like anything. And then you keep putting more and more pieces together, and then you start to get an idea. Oh, I can see that this is a nature scene or whatever, but you still don't know what the picture is. And then you keep putting together pieces, and then at some point, the whole picture gets assembled. You can see the whole picture. And that's what my journey into what I call the big truth was like. I was given all these puzzle pieces, and I didn't know how to put them together, and there wasn't a big picture that was clear to me, but I was getting pieces. And then this continued over probably 10, 15 years until ultimately concluding with what you called and I call the ultimate freedom experience, which is what I consider to be my life's work, the biggest gift that I can give to humanity. Because along the lines of this, when I started to make these discoveries, because I found all the other stuff didn't work and it didn't give me the answers, when I finally started to change and the struggle, suffering, and pain started to go away and the patterns started to break, I thought to myself, well, maybe this was just weird Robert's solution to a screwed up life and nobody else would care and it wouldn't help anybody else, but maybe this would help other people. So I started sharing it. And the first big share I did was a book called Busting Loose from the Money Game. And the reason it was called that is because it was about the big truth of life. But what came through me was frame it within money to get people's attention. Because everybody has issues with money, whether they have a lot or a little or none. And everybody's interested in improving their money supply or whatever, or the issues with it. And so I shared this and I figured, well, again, nobody might care. Uh, but as it turned out, a lot of people were interested in the discoveries that I had made. And this book became a gigantic bestseller and it rocketed all over the world and it turned into a speaking and a coaching and a writing career. But I still didn't have all the puzzle pieces. That was just some of them. So my journey continued. And more puzzle pieces, the picture getting more and more clear. But every time I got more puzzle pieces and I saw more of the picture, I changed. And the interesting thing was I didn't change because I was using techniques. I didn't change because I was trying to make bad stuff go away. I didn't change because I was trying to heal. I was just taking this journey. All these crazy things were happening, and insights were coming from this inner teacher, and I was seeing things differently, like you narrated from your story. But it was just happening. I wasn't doing anything. And this journey took me deeper and deeper and deeper into the big truth, and I continued to share as my clarity evolved. I would do what I call a debrief, and that might have been a book, it might have been a course, might have been a live event where I would share what I had just gone through, the new discoveries I'd made, and how I had changed. And then when the Ultimate Freedom Experience released, which is now about 12 years ago, this inner teacher told me, this is the whole assembled puzzle that you were meant to put together and see and experience. There aren't going to be any more quantum leaps. There aren't going to be any more huge new breakthroughs or insights or whatever. This is what you came to experience and to share. And then that's what I did for a long time. So again, there's a lot of people that they have trauma and they have difficult lives and they get confused and they get frustrated and they suffer and they don't do anything about it. I was built to help the people that get to a point like I did. Wait a minute. This just doesn't make sense. And the stuff I've been taught about how reality gets created doesn't make sense, because that's the kind of thing that started to happen to me on my journey. And you can interrupt me if you want to say anything.
No.
Um, I was taught, probably like a lot of people watching this video, you create your own reality and you have all this power. And you can create anything you want if you just use these techniques, and it's all coming from your thoughts and your energy and your vibration and your intention, and you're driving all of this. But I would see all these things happen, and I think you can identify with this from your story. And I would say, I never had any thoughts about that. Not one, that this kind of a thing would happen to me. Or I would have thoughts where I was panicked that this really bad thing was going to happen to me. And for days, weeks, months, I was certain this bad thing was going to happen, and then it didn't. And then I had times where I was absolutely certain that this good thing was going to happen, like maybe the story with having the money to help your dad with the doctor. And I was absolutely certain. And it didn't happen. And then you go into the self-help world and people tell you, well, no, this teaching is true. You do have the power and you are creating it. But when that kind of thing happens, then you got some limiting belief inside of you, some sabotaging belief. There's something about your energy. There's something about your vibration that's blocking it, and then you can go down this whole rabbit hole of trying to fix that. And I kept doing that. I kept doing what everybody told me. And I kept trying to heal and fix and change and raise my vibration and manifest better and remove the blocks and all this stuff. And then one day I woke up and I said, you know what? That's just not true. I'm not driving the bus. It's not coming from here. It's not my energy. It's not my vibration. It's not my intentions. There's something else going on. There's some other force at work, which you saw very clearly in the way that you languaged it, that's creating these things that are happening to me, and it isn't me. And then the question was, all right, well, what is it? Going back to, again, I needed answers. What's this force that's creating what happens to me and everybody else? And why is it creating the things that it is? And then, as I said, how am I supposed to live? And I didn't have any answers to that, but the journey continued, and then I began to get answers. As I told you, I got these puzzle pieces. I began to see things more clearly. This inner teacher was helping me. The inner teacher began to change the way that I was experiencing things. And then, like you said before, this massive light bulb went off, and lit everything up when I was able to see clearly the picture of this puzzle that I'd been assembling all these years. And then everything in my life changed down to the smallest detail. And then there tends to be an assumption, once you have a breakthrough like this, and you mentioned this too, well, now everything in your life's going to be perfect, right? Everyone's going to love you, and you're just going to have good luck, good luck, good luck, good luck. And there's never going to be any crazy stuff that happens anymore. And there's never going to be ups and downs. And there's never going to be moments where, you don't understand what's happening and stuff. And that's part of the human experience that those kinds of things happen. So anyway, long-winded explanation, but that's what happened to me. And most of the people that find their way to me are people that in one way, shape, or form hit a wall. And they didn't just hit a wall and say, I hate my life. I want to die. I don't like this. They hit a wall where they realize there's some other truth out there that explains everything, all the craziness in the world, all the craziness in history, all the craziness in my life, why things unfold the way they do, why you had a childhood like you did, and I need to know what it is. And then underneath that is, and then I need to understand how to live differently so that I'm not suffering like this. And I discovered some things that nobody else was talking about. And they changed me. And then, like I said, I began to share it. I began teaching my own stuff, starting with the busting loose stuff. That was about 20 years ago, I think, that I made those discoveries. And then the book came later, and then it kept evolving, as I said. So, and when I shared it, other people started to change when nothing else had helped them. Not everybody. That's one of the things I've discovered as a speaker, teacher, coach. Nobody's able to help everybody that comes to them, because all of us have different journeys and we have different paths. And anytime we're exposed to something, we take different things. And some people are meant to get the big breakthrough from something, and some people aren't. But I started to see that it wasn't just weird, Robert, that this could help other people. And then I started to see it was helping people all over the world in different cultures, speaking different languages in different parts of the world with different kinds of experiences that they grew up with, because people are people, despite cultural differences and where you grew up and everything else. And so it's been an amazing ride. But I'm very clear that the piece that's really important related to my work is somebody has to hit a wall where they are desperate for answers. Maybe also for relief, but there needs to be that other piece of answers.
Yeah.
Um, and then it opens a door to amazing things that I never would have. I mean, if you talked to me when I was 20s, 30s, I wasn't at that point. If somebody had given me the ultimate freedom experience back then, I don't know how I would have reacted, but I wouldn't have seen it for what it was. It wouldn't have given me any benefit. I probably would have rejected it or not finished it or whatever. Um, so anyway, that's what I felt like sharing. And so looking at everything that you talked about, and I know that a lot of people do wonder. It doesn't get to the point of hitting a wall and being desperate for answers, but there's a lot of people that wonder. Why did I have the kind of parents that I did that abused me, or why did this happen to my wife, when she was a child? Or the question I used to get so often in the early days of busting loose, teaching that stuff was, how do you explain something like Hitler? They're global events like that people say, how can something like that happen? I mean, but usually it's about their lives, and there aren't good answers out there, or all the experts disagree. That was the other challenge I had. You want answers and you go to all these experts, and most of them disagree. And yet all of them have proof and evidence and documentation of why their approach is correct, except they disagree with each other. And that used to drive me nuts.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I wanted to share in response to what you said. And so listening to your story, it pushes on that whole kind of thing. Who are we? Really? Beyond just Robert and this body, or Sean, your body, Sean character, as you referred it to. Why are we here and what's it all about and what's the point? And you said a few times, that this is, by the way, I don't use the word God anymore. I did in Busting Loose.
Okay.
As a teacher, I discovered that if you use words that a lot of people have definitions of, and sometimes very different definitions. You go to 1,000 people and you ask them to define God, there's going to be 500 different definitions,
Right.
So as a teacher, I learned to create new words, new terms, attach a meaning to them that I wanted them to mean as part of what I was sharing and teaching, and then use that word.
Okay.
But you said intelligent plan from God, God's plan for my life.
Yep.
You may be different, other people may be different. To me, that's not good enough. All right, so this is an intelligent plan and it's God's plan for me, but then for me it was why? What's the point? Why did God have a plan for this and this and this and this and this? And then, if not just for me, but for everybody else, because look at all the craziness in the world. So, what's that intelligent plan all about?
Yeah.
Why did God create this whole human thing? What's the point of it all? Bottom line,
Yeah.
what's the deeper purpose for all of it? A lot of people don't think these things are important. I discovered they're absolutely important. It doesn't matter if you're trying to become a billionaire or you're trying to build a business or you're trying to be a better parent or you're trying to uh, win something as an athlete. The answers to these questions ripple up to affect everything because there's mysteries in every aspect of life. And then when I began to have the clarity on answers to these kinds of things, then it starts to shift things. And like you described, it starts to shift the way you respond to everything, especially the things that you would have once labeled as bad,
Yeah.
that you would have judged, people you would have judged. It ripples out to change everything. When you go all the way down to the deepest level of truth and you get clarity, and then it ripples up and it changes. And the thing that was really important to me, and that I want to close with, and then I'll send it back to you, is most of the teachings out there are based on tools and techniques and repetitive practices. If you're feeling depressed, do this and it'll change that depression into feel good. If you want to produce a particular result, close your eyes and visualize the result you want. It's always about tools, techniques, repetitive practices. When this is happening, do something to change it. It's driven by that. But one of the discoveries that I made is that most of those tools and techniques and repetitive practices, they fail most of the time for most people. And so I didn't really want to go down that road anymore. And then I was shocked when I began to take this journey, and all of the things that I really wanted to happen when I was using all the tools and techniques with money and business and relationships and body and health and everything started to change when I wasn't doing anything. No tools, no techniques, no repetitive practices, no trying to change what was happening. I would be living my life, things would happen. I'd make these discoveries, things would change. The inner teacher would talk to me, show me something, and then these things would change without me doing anything. And that really surprised me because I had in my blood from all these things I learned growing up about life, and then self-help, personal development, spiritual development, where it's all about you got the power and you got to do this, and here are the formulas, and that to me was exhausting. I don't know if it was for you. Especially when it doesn't work reliably. So the fact that you could live a life, you could take a path, you could go deeper into the truth, not just understand it because that doesn't help you, but really experience the truth of it, and then watch as things just change automatically as part of that instead of you having to do it or figure out how to do it or repeat something every day or repeat something every time you felt bad. That was a major breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
But it shocked me, and it's very difficult for a lot of people that come into the ultimate freedom experience because they'll say to me, Robert, give me something to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
or give me something so I can get the benefits faster.
Right.
But that isn't what it's all about when you get into the deepest levels of truth. So I'll stop there, but that's the stuff that I wanted to share. And so to me, your story embodies all of the core elements of the things that happened to so many people and the things that led me to wanting answers and transformation, but in a different way. And again, it all started, and there's no power in this, by the way. Some people think, well, I guess I just got to go out and beg God for death or answers, and then maybe I'll get answers. I mean, that's not a magic formula. That's just what happened to me. It could have happened without me going outside and saying that. That's just what happened.
Yeah.
But that was the lowest low of my life when I did that. I really just had no energy left to do anything, and I really meant that. You
Yeah.
either got to show me what I'm missing. Um, and there's another piece to this that I didn't mention, which is that I had this amazing grandfather growing up. And when I was 12, he teased me with some aspects of what I would now call the big truth of life. And then he died after having dangled some things in front of me. And I was 12, right? So later on, I started searching, for what was he talking about. And as I began to take the journey I narrated, it was like, well, maybe these are the kinds of things that he was pointing at back then. So part of when I went outside, it was you teased the shit out of me when I was 12 with this stuff from my grandfather, and then you killed him off before he could really help me and give me the clarity. And I can't do this anymore. I've been searching for decades. I haven't found the truth. So I either need you to show me or I'm ready to die because I can't live this way anymore. Um, I was so low at that point, and I can remember that.
Yeah.
And then it's just been an extraordinary ride and things that happened that I never would have expected. Going back to you create your own reality, I never expected any of this. I never had any intentions for any of this. I never had thoughts about any of this. I
Yeah.
wanted to be a very successful entrepreneur. I had no desire to be a writer, speaker, teacher, coach. I never thought I'd have a career like this. I ended up going to China, as I told you, for 6 years. I never had that as a goal.
Yeah.
I never thought about it. I'm doing some things now that I would never would have imagined 5 years ago, 10 years ago that I would ever do. And it's crystal clear to me now that I'm not creating my own reality, and it isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing when
Yeah.
you get to the truth of that.
Yeah.
But there's that old saying, I don't remember where because I'm not a organized religion person, but there's something somewhere in the Bible, there's a word, there's a phrase of the truth will set you free or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's really true. When it's the real truth, the big truth, not human lies, illusions, and stories, but the real truth about what I call the human story or the human experience, it really does set you free from all forms of struggle, suffering, and pain, and opens the door to all kinds of amazing new experiences and ways of experiencing things in new and different ways. But it involves experiencing that truth, not just understanding it or getting knowledge, because I learned that doesn't help. I used to live, last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back to you. I used to live in a small town in Virginia called Charlottesville. And in the airport, when you're waiting for your bags after you get off the plane, there was this, big screen TV thing, and they would have this quote from Thomas Jefferson that said, "Knowledge is power." And that's true in some things, related to skills and business and certain other things, but it isn't when it comes to creating your reality and power in life. And knowledge is an interesting first start, but it's experiencing the truth and changing through it. That's where the real power is, not just being able to get an A on a test.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there and see what you feel like saying or where you want to go from here.
So, there's the mind machine and there's God, what you refer to as TCE. And so I'm having a little trouble understanding as you go through my journey, like there's 6-year-old Sean, right? Where is the mind machine and where is God? Because I'm just having trouble. What do you feel like the difference is? How could I know if this is TCE, God, or
Well,
this is mind
TCE, for
machine?
the people that are listening, TCE stands for True Creative Essence. And that's the term that I ultimately began to use, like I said before, creating a new term and for the creator of everything that happens to humans, what most people would call God or creator or source or whatever. There's all
Okay.
kinds of different words.
Yep.
different words in different languages. I started to call that creative force that's responsible for everything that happens true creative essence. And then since that's a mouthful, we abbreviate it to TCE.
Got it.
Now, this is a very long discussion that I'm going to make very simple and quick. So it's flawed and there's a lot more we could say, but I'm just going to make it very simple to illustrate the point and answer your question.
Okay.
Imagine that you are TCE, an infinite being with more power and knowledge and whatever than you could possibly imagine. Snap your finger and you can create entire universes and planets and populate it with animals and humans and stuff, right? I mean, just more power than we can possibly imagine. Imagine that that being, and it isn't a human and it isn't a being, but we're going to use that word, decided that it wanted to have experiences that it cannot have in its natural state as an infinite being like that. It wants to have a different kind of experience. It wants to experience limitation and restriction since it has no limits and no restrictions. It wants to have a very different kind of an experience than what its normal thing is. So it decides it's going to create this human experience in order to be able to have experiences it cannot have in its infinite natural state. Are you clear on that? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, why it made that decision and then things I'm about to get into, who knows? This to me is the model that the things that I share rest on. For whatever reason, it decided to create a physical universe and bodies, and humans that can have these experiences. And as part of that, there was childhood. I mean, there are things in spiritual teachings about babies that are born and they have memories from past lives, and there's all kinds of stories about that. But basically, and you know this because you're a parent and anybody else that's watching this, if you're a parent, you know that babies basically come in and they don't know anything and they can't do anything. They're basically a blank slate and they have to learn everything. They have to learn how to walk and they have to learn how to do all these kinds of things and they have to learn how to think and they're like a blank slate. They're like a computer with a hard drive that has nothing on it. And so TCE wants to have unique experiences. My language is by shaping itself into unique characters, humans, put them in unique situations, and have them have unique experiences. And there's supposedly 9 billion humans. TCE doesn't want to have 9 billion of the same experience. It wants to have 9 billion different experiences. And in order for that to happen, from childhood growing up, we have to be built to be unique beings who think certain ways and have certain experiences and process reality in certain ways. So we are built from the ground up, starting from the moment that we're born, or in some cases, there's stories of stuff that babies are picking up when they're in the womb, fighting between the parents, or things the parents said or whatever. There's interesting stories about that. So if a baby begins as a blank slate, like a computer with a hard drive that's empty, when the baby starts to learn things and it starts to build this, I call that the mind machine. The mind machine is like the computer that's inside of us that absorbs all these experiences that we're having and comes up with conclusions, and we end up growing up to become a unique being who can have unique experiences and process them in unique ways, different from everybody else. That's why, to me, childhood exists, and TCE did not just have us pop into life as an adult,
Right.
because we're built from the ground up to have unique um, biases and wounds and knowledge and experiences and distortions, and we're built from the ground up. To me, that's what childhood's all about, to create us as a unique being who can then have unique experiences and process them in unique ways and heal from those things, change and transform if that's part of the story, which is part of what you narrated, although that doesn't happen to everybody.
Right.
Um, So the mind machine is now there's a term out there that most people have heard that's called subconscious mind. And it's similar in its definition to what I just said. Mind machine is slightly different, which we go into detail on, but it's the part of you that stores all your memories and stores all the conclusions that you draw growing up. When you said that you had, there's something wrong with me and I'm stupid and I'm not good at stuff and I'm not good enough and all this stuff, all of that is stored in the mind machine.
Right.
You have these experiences, and it's like it's a file that gets stored on the computer. And that's what I call the mind machine. Again, I don't like to use terms that other people use. So I came up with the term mind machine. I define it in a specific way, and then I describe how it works um, day to day. But that's what the mind machine is. Now, everything that we experience, everything with this body, everything with thoughts and feelings and sensations inside you, everything that happens outside in the world that I call story space, it's all true creative essence. Or you could say it's all God shaping itself into these things in order to have these unique experiences. So it's not that the mind machine is not God or TCE, and TCE is not, everything that we experience is what I call true creative essence, shaping itself into those things in order to make a unique human experience possible so it can have experiences it cannot have in its natural state. See, TCE doesn't have any money in its natural state. It doesn't have relationships. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have business. It doesn't have health problems. It doesn't have other people. It doesn't have other countries. It doesn't have war. It doesn't have any of the stuff that happens with humans. And so TCE wanted to explore what's possible when you limit unlimited power. And so that's why, and again, I could go on this for hours, but that's the core reason. And it's all about TCE having unique experiences it cannot have in its natural state. Now, there's a lot of spiritual teachings that say Earth is a school and you got to learn lessons and you got to evolve and you got to expand your consciousness and then you can graduate into better places, the cool places in the universe or whatever. And that's one of the things I discovered isn't true. It's not about learning, although that can happen. It's not about expanding your consciousness. It's not about burning off your karma. All those kinds of things that I once believed. It's all about, at its core, unique experiences. And that's all. And the rest of it's just, to me, human overlay, what I call lies, illusions, and stories. So long-winded answer to your question of what's the mind machine and how's the mind machine different than God? The mind machine was, you could call it an illusory tool that TCE created in order to make humans and unique humans possible. But it's all TCE. The metaphor I usually give for this, and I use the example, as you know, of the Harry Potter stories,
Yes.
because most people have heard of it or they've read it or they've seen a movie or something. I've been doing this all over the world. No one's ever said to me, although I'm sure they exist, I have no idea what you're talking about. Who's Harry Potter?
Right.
And even if that happened, it doesn't matter. But what I say is Harry Potter is a fictional character in a story. You open the book, Harry Potter has thoughts. He has feelings. He appears to have magical powers. All these things happen to him, but it's all coming from the author who wrote this. You with me?
Yep.
Harry Potter can't say anything, do anything, think anything, feel anything unless the author wrote it first. So there's not the author and Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's the author, and they're separate. Harry Potter is J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling is Harry Potter. You cannot separate them. This to me is what the teaching we are all one in spiritual teachings, or sometimes when people say we're all connected. Connected is still not accurate because connected means separate but connected.
Okay.
But everything that you experience is TCE in motion. It's TCE using its creative power to shape itself into that illusion appearing and appearing to be real so it can have these unique experiences. Again, I tried to make something that I usually drip out a little bit at a time, and I don't try to summarize the whole thing in 6 minutes, but
Yeah.
that's a seed plant. It can cause confusion and certain things may not be clear, but that's the core of
Yeah.
one of the major discoveries that I made about what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, they'll get it. They'll get it at a deeper level in the ultimate freedom experience. So, what about beliefs and truth? So, I'm starting to like see, and I think you would say God, TCE, is putting in these realizations of, oh, I had a belief that Sean was stupid, a belief that Sean is not enough, a belief that Sean is not accepted. Um, but that's not the truth. So I was curious of any words coming to you on that as far as it's like I was put into all these programs through the media, through the government, through my parents, whatever, and now it's like this remembrance of like a lot of this shit's melting off me, and this just must be in the divinely orchestrated story of Sean, but it's like it's melting off me, and I'm like, oh, oh wow, I'm not stupid. I am enough. I am accepted. I am like abundant in love and so I'm one by one I'm starting to see these beliefs and truths and even with my marriage like something that came to me I think from God or if it's something that God stored in the mind machine is that boy who was looking out his front window at 6 years old realized dad's not coming home felt that pain developed some type of program from that. And then you got a guy sitting here at 44 years old who's had a 18-year struggle in relationship where I like couldn't get to like I would say as a victim like she's got a wall up. I can't get past this wall. I'm like, "Oh, I got to keep the family together. I'm going to try hundreds of things. I'm going to earn her love. I'm going to get her love." 18 years into it. And then I look back at that 6-year-old and be like, "Oh, so that 6-year-old felt that pain, doesn't want his kids to feel that pain of dad's never going to come home again." So then he's been trying all these things for 18 years because of that program that was like deeply ingrained as a 6-year-old. So it's very interesting.
It comes back to the same thing that I said before. TCE created the human experience in order to explore what the possibilities are when you limit unlimited power and unlimited knowledge and everything that's its natural state. So, in simple terms, TCE decided that it wanted to create a Sean character. So then TCE says, all right, what do I want to experience as Sean? It could have been something very different than what you narrated, but ultimately TCE had a plan, an intelligent plan is the language that I think you used before, divine plan. Oh, okay, here's what's going to happen. Sean's going to be born, and these things are going to go into his mind machine to create a unique character who can experience the world in a unique way, which is the experience I want to have as Sean. Same thing with me as Robert, same thing with whoever's watching this. TCE had a plan for what it wanted to experience in your life, birth to death. And so the plan starts out when you're born. And the plan was, who knows why, this stuff's going to go into little Sean. And the father's not going to come home. And that's going to ripple out to have this impact in the mind machine. And then Sean's going to grow up, and then he's going to get into trouble with the drugs, and he's going to make these friends, and he's going to start doing these illegal things, and all these are unique experiences to have when you're having them, but they're also building this unique character, leading to becoming the cop, and then all these things, and then the problems, and the head injury, and then the diving into personal development, and then finding your way to ultimate freedom and getting these insights. That was all part of the plan. Start out this way, build the Sean mind machine in a certain way from a young age, have Sean believe these things. There's something wrong with me and I'm stupid. I can't this and I can't that and I whatever and then have all these unique experiences as you're growing up. And then in your case, which isn't always the case, my father, for example, died at 86. He had wounds. He had childhood trauma and pain. He never dealt with any of it. He never got therapy. He never went into healings. None of it changed. He died basically the same guy. His journey was not about spiritual development, discovering these things, healing. It was a different plan than you. But that's what happens with all of us. And the big question you ultimately, to me, on this path, you have to answer is all this crazy stuff is happening in life to everybody. To me, at some point, you have to answer the question, is all of this random and accidental, or is it the result of an intelligent plan? That's one question that you have to answer for yourself on this path. And if your answer is, which is fine, but the truth is, if your answer is it's all random and accidental, then you're in deep shit. If the answer is it's an intelligent plan, then the kind of questions we talked about can surface, which, okay, well, how does that work? And why was the plan this way for Sean and this way for Robert and this way for somebody else watching and this way for Donald Trump, who's president of the United States, you know? And then, well, then how does it work? You know, how does the plan unfold? And, you know, how do I live my life? You know, these things I talked, it opens the door, but it starts with intelligent plan because if it's all accidental and random, which a lot of people believe, or that's what's in their mind machine, there's no hope. You know, there's no hope for healing or for transformation or for anything changing because it can't happen when that's the core belief. But when there's intelligent plan, and then that takes you down a journey of well, tell me more about that and how does it work and why is there that plan and whose plan is it and you know blah blah blah. It opens the door to all kinds of amazing things that can happen.
Yeah, and it's like the knock in the head. What I mean, it was just part of the. I look at it as it was part of the Sean story, and then maybe that was like the knock of saying, "Hey, Sean, it's in the story now. You're not going to be a cop anymore. I got other plans for you," like says God, and then Sean kind of ignores it and like, "No, no, no, I got to get my pension. I got to take care of my family." And then the defund the police and then all these like horrible things kept on having like Sean's getting pummeled and then all of a sudden he's just forced to quit, right? So eventually it's like the storyline appears where like here's a nudge, here's a nudge, here's a nudge. Okay, now Sean's, on to the next page. And I remember sitting in my room like at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and there was this dark, dark feeling of, oh my gosh, I let down my family. I just totally screwed my career. I don't have a pension. I don't know what I'm gonna do. My family was depending on me. And plus you got all like the PTSD, depression, all this stuff. And that was like this dark, dark moment, kind of like when you went out in your backyard and you're like, give me some answers. That might
But
be
see,
that
this
moment.
is the important point is TCE can't experience any of that in its natural state. It wants to experience exactly those kinds of things in unique ways for all of us. And then people who go through the ultimate freedom experience, they'll hear some of this in deeper explanations and examples of this. And they'll say, well, I'm so happy that TCE is having a blast and really enjoying my story while I'm here suffering, and
Yeah.
having these horrible experiences and not knowing what I'm going to do. But that's a perfect example of what I was saying. TCE never knows, never doesn't know what to do. It's never confused. It's never, I'm going to try to do this and oh, it didn't work. I'll try to do this. Oh, it didn't work. What am I going to do? It can't, it doesn't have that experience, but it wanted to. And that's why has been created. And it gets back to that whole thing of, there's me and there's TCE and it's enjoying my story while I'm suffering, and having this horrible time. There's a lie in that of that there's two. Like I said before about Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling, there's not Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling 2. There's one, J.K. Rowling, who in a creative act shapes her consciousness into all these characters in those stories, but they're not separate and they're not suffering at her expense. It's a completely different kind of a thing. And we go deeply into this in the Ultimate Freedom Experience. And so, but it's a perfect example of why this human experience was created, because all that stuff you just narrated, oh, I got to take care of my family and I don't have a pension. What am I going to do? And I got this $50,000, but what the hell am I going to do when that runs out? And if I don't have some other way, TCE never has thoughts like that.
Mm.
And that's the whole point of this, for it to have experiences of billions of human beings in unique situations, having unique experiences, unique thoughts, unique feelings, unique sensations as they're going through their experiences that it cannot have in its natural state. And it isn't random or accidental. It's all part of a plan, birth to death, that there is for all of us, is my truth. The book of your life was written before you were born, and it unfolds exactly the way it was written, no matter how it appears. There's a lot of other things that are part of this, most of which you can verify for yourself from your own personal experience when you take a journey like this. And some of this, you have to rely on an inner knowing and a resonance that that's just the truth. You can't prove it. But the vast majority of stuff that's in ultimate freedom, no matter how weird it may seem at first, you can verify for yourself from your own personal experience that it's true. And I tell people, don't believe me. Look, look for yourself. You can verify this from your own personal experience. Um, we got a few minutes left and then I got to run. So is there anything else you'd like to say or ask before we close this part down? And as I said, we can continue this in the future, but
Yeah, I'd love to do a part two of this and just dive a little deeper. So, basically, would you say I'm on the right track of like just trusting in the Sean movie that God TCE created and not try to control everything, not fear about what's to come.
well, see, here's the thing. No disrespect intended. The mind machine is built to try to understand everything in a certain way and make sense out of everything in a certain way. And so, underneath your question is, despite what you said before, I could be doing something right now. I could be doing something wrong right now.
Okay.
Um, there could be something I'm supposed to be doing right now, and I'm not. I'm missing the boat.
Yeah.
And none of that's true. What's true is the Sean story is unfolding exactly the way that it was meant to unfold. The way it's unfolding is, and again, this happened to me and it happens to most of the people that find their way to me, but it doesn't happen to everybody in the world. In fact, it doesn't happen to the vast majority of people. What's happening also in your story is you're healing and you're changing. And the old lies, illusions, and stories is what I call them about who Sean is and who Sean isn't, and is he smart or stupid, and all of that, as you said. I don't know if you said melting away or if I think you used that
Yeah,
language.
like a melting away, like a remembrance of,
That's happening.
yeah.
And before, you weren't just kind of going with the flow, or going with the flow on steroids. You were resisting it and you were trying to make the flow go in certain directions and you were trying to, now it's just, oh, I get this now. There's this story unfolding and there isn't any good or bad or right or wrong. And there's just what's happening. And so here's what's happening right now. So what's happening right now is the Sean character has been changing. And struggle, suffering, and pain has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And there is the opportunity on this path for it to go away forever so that no matter what happens, inside you or outside you, it doesn't cause what you would perceive as struggle, suffering, and pain. And you're partially there. My prediction would be that will deepen and you'll become more of what I call, it's not a perfect term, but I just call it emotional bulletproof. You'll become more emotionally bulletproof to the crazy twists and turns of human life. But you can see the Sean story is about transformation. And that's what's happening right now, and that's what will continue. I'm 68, as I mentioned. Massive transformation happened from 48 to feel like saying 62, 60.
Okay.
And it's still happening slower and more quietly, but it was massive for those 12 years. But I could say that there's still change and transformation and interesting things happening in the Robert story, but the pace is much slower and it's much gentler. And because the heavy lifting, so to speak, was done earlier on the journey, and that was the design of the story. It could be just as crazy now. It isn't.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
I love that. Well, thank
And
you.
that's all that matters. And again, going back to Harry Potter, can Harry Potter make any mistakes in the book? Yes or no?
No.
He can appear to make a mistake within the context of the story, right?
Yeah.
But he can't make a mistake because he can only do what J.K. Rowling wrote.
Just flip to the next page and let's see what happened next.
Yeah, you can't screw up your story. It's not possible for TCE to say, my plan for Sean was this, but he's not doing that. Damn it. I got to figure out some way to get him back on the path. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that says you came into this life with a destiny and a purpose and a mission, but you can fuck it up. You can get off track. You cannot fulfill your destiny, and then that causes a lot of stress and fear and worry in a lot of people. Oh my God, I could screw it up, or I did screw it up, or what if I do? And it's all part of what I call phase one of the human story. You can't. We don't have the ability or the power to screw it up. The question is just what's happening? How is it being perceived? And for me, because this was such a big part of my story, is there struggle, suffering, and pain appearing? Because ultimately, I wanted to discover the big truth as I explained, and I wanted answers, and I wanted to know the answers to those big questions. But underneath all of that was, I want to stop suffering. I want struggle, suffering, and pain to disappear. I wasn't consciously aware of that. If you'd come up to me back then and said, "Hey, Robert, what do you really hope happens here from this journey that I wouldn't have said that struggle, suffering, and pain would go away. Consciously, I wouldn't have said that, but that's what was there. That's what I really wanted deeply. I just wasn't aware of it.
And that's phase three. When there's no more struggling, suffering, or pain, is phase three. Or
That's one of the benefits of what I call phase three of the human story is that struggle, suffering, and pain vanish.
okay.
And you experience yourself, thoughts, feelings, sensations, your body, everything that happens in your life, what I call your story, business, relationships, whatever, what's going on in the world, in a radically different way. But the biggest benefit, because I have a bias about this, is that struggle, suffering, and pain vanish.
Awesome.
And most people can't understand, and I couldn't when I was younger, that that's possible, number one. Even Buddhism, which is a spiritual teaching, talks about the fact that the human experience is all about suffering. And the implication is that doesn't go away until you become enlightened, or whatever. But that's all what the human experience is about. It's about suffering and struggle and pain. And a lot of people don't think it's possible for that to go away. Or if they thought it was possible, there's no way they could imagine what it was like. What would life be like? If I didn't struggle, suffer, or have pain from anything, and I could enjoy and appreciate all the crazy twists and turns in my life and in the world, no matter, no one can imagine or believe what that would be like. But when you actually have the experience, it's just exquisite. The word I use is delicious. But I never would have been able to think my way there, imagine what it was like. But that to me, that is just my bias talking. That's one of the biggest gifts of this path because my belief is the biggest problem in life is struggle, suffering, and pain, or unhappiness, or whatever you want to call it. To me, that's the biggest problem in life. You go up to a lot of people and you say, "What's the biggest problem in your life right now?" And they'll say money, or they'll say business, or they'll say relationships, or they'll say something with their health. And those are, in fact, problems if those things are happening, but they're not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the unhappiness, the struggle, suffering, and pain that comes from those things being those ways not being the way you want them to be. With money, business, relationships, health, whatever. To me, it's the biggest problem in life. So when the biggest problem in life gets solved, it ripples out to change your life in ways you can't imagine. And this path into the big truth and in this particular thing that I offer to guide people and support people in getting to that place called the ultimate freedom experience, you used the word miracle before about a change that you experienced and that the money appeared. This ultimate freedom experience, where it can take you, is miraculous. I still feel that way. I say to people, it's the most amazing thing I ever experienced and the most amazing thing I've ever taught. Because one last thing I got to say before I leave is that for my journey's been a little bit different. My bias, and again, everybody doesn't have to accept this. This is just my bias. I don't have the right to teach something, is my bias, unless I have experienced it myself to such a deep degree that there's almost no question that somebody could ask me about it that I can't answer from actual experience. Not answer by thinking about it, not answering because I read it in a book, not answering because some expert taught me, but that I can't answer from personal experience. If I've experienced something to such a deep degree like that, then to me, I've earned the right to be able to teach it. And so that's what my whole career has been like. Been there, done that. Part of the building of the puzzle I talked about before. Then stop and do a debrief of what I just experienced to such a deep degree and can answer just about any question from personal experience. And then I would be taken deeper. Been there, done that, experience it to a very deep degree myself, then pop up and offer a debrief, a teaching on that piece. And then when it got to ultimate freedom, it was the whole picture that was being shared, not just chunks of it. So that's really important to me. There's nothing wrong with having a mentor or a teacher or a master or having learned something from someone else. It's just my journey was different.
Yeah.
It was a deeper experience because all of it I actually experienced myself before I began sharing it. And so because of that, my life was crazier. And usually it took me longer to experience transformation than it did the people that I help because of that dynamic.
Yeah.
I usually was the slowpoke, is what I tell people, because people get impatient, you know. Um, so we can continue this. Time for one last comment or thought from you, and then I got to run.
Yeah, I just appreciate your time and I look forward to doing a part two on this. And yeah, just gonna turn to the next page now and see what's next in the Sean story today and tomorrow and going up.
Yeah, and the thing again, I just want to say that's really significant about the way you narrated your story is you're just different and you're noticing it. That's very different than something happens and you go, God damn it, I hate this. Fuck this. This sucks. How can I fix this? Oh, let me remember. Oh, no, I'm just a character. And this is a story and it's just unfolding and it's part of an intelligent plan. And you try to talk yourself into, a tool technique, repetitive practice. You try to change your state by doing something. You're not doing that.
Awesome.
You're just naturally experiencing these things differently. It's just happening. You're not tooling it. You're not techniquing it. You're not manufacturing it. You're not trying to turn this into this. You're just different, right?
Yep.
Naturally and automatically, stuff's happening, and the response that comes automatically, lightning fast, is different. And that's the gift on this journey. It isn't tools and techniques that you got to use every time this appears to be happening. You just change, and then things happen, and automatically there's a different response. That's the gift. In one of my things, I had this button. I don't know if you ever saw that video. It's about talking about what I call emotional freedom.
Okay.
And I said, imagine I have this button. And I say, imagine I have this button. And every time you feel bad, anger, frustration, sadness, depression, anxiety, whatever, anytime you feel bad, you just push the button and it would make it go away. That sounds pretty positive to a lot of people on the surface. Oh, great, I can have this button. And every time I feel bad, push the button and I can feel better. But guess what? The way life is, if you had a button like that, you'd be pushing it all day, every day, right?
Yep.
So, and I say to people, so is that what you want? Do you want a magic button that every time you feel bad, you can push it? Because then you'd have to, this is what your day would be like. Or would you rather not have the feel bad ever come up at all? That's the real gift, not the magic button. But what most people are teaching and offering out there is the equivalent of a magic button. Use this technique, use this tool. Anytime you want to create something or attract something or manifest something, or anytime you're feeling anxiety, do this to make it smaller, to make it go away. But then and nobody really wants that. I mean, it's better than just suffering.
Yeah.
But there's another level of gift in this that comes from the big truth, which is stuff happens and the suffering doesn't come up. You don't need to push a button to change it because it doesn't happen anymore. That's the gift. Something deep inside of you at a very deep level changes, and that's what the ultimate freedom experience is designed to facilitate. Something changes inside you at the deepest level so that you just experience everything differently, automatically, 24/7, no matter what's happened, no techniques, no button. You're just different. And that's the thing that everybody watching this, if they didn't see that clearly before, they'll see that clearly now in the way that you're talking about what's happening to you now. There's no tools, there's no techniques, there's no trying to talk yourself into anything. You're just different and you're noticing it. And you also, you didn't say this, but I think you're clear that you didn't do it.
Right.
You're going about your life, you had all these experiences, and all of a sudden, I just say you woke up one morning and you noticed you were responding to things differently,
Yeah.
but you didn't do it.
Right.
It's not you were using a technique for 9 months, specifically trying to create so that you could just ride the waves of your story and it wouldn't bother you or whatever. You're going through a bunch of craziness, and the next thing you know, from different things, including being exposed to the ultimate freedom experience, you changed. Now, who changed you?
I just feel like I'm a character and God's the author, TCE. So this was just in my story to
So
change.
who changed you?
God.
Or in my language, TCE, yeah. And that's the way everything is. Anything that happens is because whether you want to call it God or creator or source or TCE or whatever word you may have, the answer, why is this happening to me? How did this happen? It's always, even if somebody uses a technique for 8 months and it appears that using that technique changed them, who still did it?
God, TCE.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The ripples from all this. So to be continued. Thanks for your time and the opportunity to share this, and to be continued.
Thank you for your time. And then for anybody who has not done Ultimate Freedom Challenge yet, I will put it in the notes below this video. So thank you so much for your time, Robert, and I look forward to getting to know you more.
Okay, bye bye for now.
Take care.